Good afternoon. Welcome. It's Thursday, December 8th. For the longest today, I thought it was Friday. It just felt like a Friday. Then it got me thinking what yesterday felt like, and I'm not even sure at this point. But here we are. It's Thursday. It's SHAC meeting time. Appreciate everybody being here. This is our second meeting of the year. So if you weren't here for our first meeting, well, welcome to the first meeting for you, for the meeting, or for the committee, that is. And so, sign-in sheets outside. Hopefully everybody did get a chance to sign in. I did have some agendas printed, but no worries. I kind of like to do things digitally, so if you have not had the opportunity to get onto my slide deck yet, that's where all of the handouts you see here and everything else that we will be covering will be kind of housed. And so if you did not get a chance to get to the first meeting with us, you want to kind of just catch up and review on your own time, you can. I've got all the information here, some of the handouts that we have covered initially, and just some of the other topics that are kind of important for the committee itself. So again, if you're interested in going back to kind of just catch up, great. If not, we will have time throughout the rest of the semester in the spring to kind of circle back on some of this stuff because it is kind of reoccurring and cyclical. So having said that, again, sign-in sheets, there was food, there are drinks, so if you didn't get a chance to pick up something and you'd like to right now, feel free to go get yourself something, come on back. And if not, then we're gonna go ahead and get started with our presenter for this meeting. We have T-Chat with us today, and I'm not going to say too much more so that T-Chat themselves can present and kind of go through what it is that they do and all the good things that they're going to be doing for us as a district. And so with that, having said that, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Ms. Pena here.
Hi, Dr. White. Nice to hear you again.
Yes, good to see you again.
Good to see you. Yes. So how much time do I have to go over T-Chat just to know how much you have to share?
How much time would you like to have?
I think I can do it in 15 minutes. Is that enough? Is that possible? 15 minutes?
15 minutes is perfect.
Okay. So let me share a PowerPoint that I have here. 1 second. Let me see if I can share my screen. Oh, I cannot. Will it be possible to share my screen?
Let me see if I can grant that access to you. Can you try now?
Okay, perfect. So I am the program manager with the UPRGB T-Chat program. And T-Chat, the Texas Child Health Access to Telemedicine program, is part of something called the Texas Child Mental Health Care Consortium. The consortium is happening in the whole state of Texas and is being implemented by each of the different medical schools. UPRGB School of Medicine, we are covering 13 counties from Nueces County to Webb County all the way down to the valley. That's the area we cover. Other medical schools are covering other counties, other regions, but the consortium is being offered in the whole state. T-Chat is one of the programs under the consortium. We work with schools, we work with school districts, and we offer them two services. The main component is the access to mental health services via telehealth for students, virtual services for students. That is the main component for mental health. And then we also have an educational component where we provide training presentations for school staff, students, and parents. And the idea is that the schools, the ISDs, are going to tell us what's the need. So maybe, for example, the school counselors in your ISD, they will benefit from learning about the techniques they can use whenever they have a student coming to their offices, a student that maybe is going through anxiety, or a student with ADHD. What are some techniques that they can use to help the student at that time in their offices? And maybe we could teach them some reading techniques. Or maybe they want to understand more about binary, non-binary genders. Whatever it is, right, that your counselors feel they will benefit from. Or teachers in general. Maybe it's a training for the faculty as well. Or maybe you feel that your families, the parents, will benefit in general just from learning more about mental health. What's mental health? that will be a topic that we can present. Or maybe something for students. Maybe you have noticed that the high school students, right? Maybe some of them are very stressed with, different things, especially around testing times. So maybe we could do something like stress coping skills, right, for teenagers and teach them some techniques on how to cope with stress and things like that. So that is the idea of the training and education. We also have a list of the most common topics that we have been doing. But the idea is really to let the ISD tell us what's the gap, what's the need. And then based on that, we'll probably, in our team of providers, a team of clinicians who are doing the telehealth sessions with the students, providers, hopefully, right, will have expertise in that topic. So for example, if you want a presentation on anxiety, maybe that presentation will be given by one of our behavioral health consultants. We call them behavioral health consultants, and they are all the team members that you see in yellow, a mix of LPCs, clinical social workers, and psychologists. They are our behavioral health consultants, and maybe the topic is on understanding mental health, or stress coping skills, or anxiety, or depression. Maybe it'll be presented by one of them. Very likely that one of them, or honestly, most of them have expertise on those topics. If it's something more about, like, for example, ADHD or autism, then, right, for those topics, maybe it'll be one of our psychiatrists, the one presenting the topic. So it's really depending on the topic. We'll find someone who has expertise on that topic. Very likely that we have already done that topic with other schools in the past. So that is the educational component. And then going back to the telehealth session that is already available, right? The telehealth services are available to all the students in your ISD to Los Summit Way. All the students have access, and the way it works is that school counselors, and I went to your ISD a couple of weeks ago and trained the school counselors on the referral process, so they are familiar with the program. And the way it works is that your school counselors, they can identify any student that they think will benefit from additional mental health services, from additional support. Any student that will benefit from talking to someone will benefit from this program and can be referred to the program. As you can see on this slide, we have different providers, right? We have LPCs, we have social workers, we have psychologists, we have psychiatrists. So really it's for anyone. Anyone that will benefit from talking to someone, you can refer the student to the program, and then we'll decide, right? We'll start the services with an intake and assessment session. The intake and assessment is conducted by one of the people in yellow. And then during that intake and assessment, we're going to ask a lot of questions. It's a mental health assessment. The guardian has to be present, the parent, the guardian, whoever is taking care of that child has to be present with that child. And then after that session, we'll decide what's the treatment plan for that child. And for the most part, the treatment plan includes 4 follow-up therapy sessions. That's for the most part what our students need. More therapy, right? They need to talk to someone. We establish some treatment goals at the beginning of the program, and then on the follow-up sessions, the therapist is working with those families, with that student, following up on those whatever goals were set up. Those follow-up sessions might include consultations with a psychiatrist if needed, right? Depending on the concern, we might refer to psychiatry. And then if it's a more complex case that we think will benefit from long-term services, we'll connect that student to other services. We'll connect them to your local mental health authority or to other providers in your area. The idea is that I will provide bridge of care. If they are, if that child needs long-term services, we'll connect them to those services. But in the meantime, while they are seen by whatever, is the next practice, we'll keep providing sessions. For the most part, we offer 4 follow-up sessions, but depending on the child, depending on the complexity of the case, we might be able to extend the number of sessions until they either complete their goals, they have progress towards the goals that were established in the intake and assessment, or if they need to be referred to other practice until they have their first session with that other practice or that LMHA. That is what what we do, those are the two services of the program. Telehealth for students, only for students at this point. I get the question if, whether or not these services are available for faculty, for staff. No yet, hopefully in the future. For now, it's just for the students. And then the training and education, and that service is available to everyone, to school counselors, faculty, any topics that you think your ISD will benefit from. Again, if we haven't done that topic in the past, hopefully if it's something related to mental health, we should have someone on the team that has expertise on that topic and will develop that topic for you. The presentations are virtual. Since we work in 13 counties, it's not possible to have these presentations in person. Virtual, and for the most part, the presentations are 45 minutes long, and then we have 10 to 15 minutes for questions. So we schedule for an hour. Sometimes, especially the presentations for students, since it's a little bit more complicated with the students, usually these presentations are scheduled during the school day. Those presentations for students can be more like 20-30 minutes to accommodate to their classes and all of that. But if it's for faculty, for families, they tend to be 60 minutes long. And I don't know if any of you has any questions at this point.
The session that involves the parent, what's the time frame for that? Like, is it just school hours, or would they be available after school hours?
So for the most part, the sessions, the trainings and presentations are from Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, because that's the time when our clinic is open. And for the most part, our providers, our clinicians are the ones providing those sessions. So they usually work Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. Now, if you're going to have a big event, let's say, a conference, a parent conference, let us know as soon as you know of the event. And we'll try. Maybe we can, if we give enough notice to the clinician, the provider, they'll be able to accommodate that on their schedule. But for the most part, it's Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, virtually.
And were you asking about the intake, or you were just asking about
The part that the parents required?
Ms. Pena, can you hear me?
Yes.
He was asking more about the intake process at the beginning when they're working with telehealth services with the student.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question. Can you repeat that?
I'm guessing it's gonna be the same because that's our business hours, so that makes sense.
He was just asking about the intake process with the telehealth services.
Oh, you're asking about the intake with the patient, the actual telehealth session for the students that have been referred.
When the parent, you said the parent's required for a portion of that, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking me about the presentations. No, yes. The parents, the guardians are required to be present in the intake and assessment session, which is the very first encounter our team has with the student. They need to be present in that session if the student is a minor, because we need to make sure that whatever we propose, right, whatever the treatment plan is something that works for the family and something that the guardian consents for the child. So they need to be present. And then, depending on the age, depending on the concern, we might also invite the guardians to be present in the follow-up sessions, depending on the case. But what we have seen is that especially for older students, high school students, right, those sessions oftentimes are just with the student, because the student feel more comfortable sharing if mom and dad are not next to them. So it works best not to have the guardian present. And I think the younger the child, the more likely that we'll need to have the guardian present in the session. They can either go to the school campus and take the session with the student from the school campus, or if they work, for example, they could join the Zoom call. We use Zoom for the sessions, but they could also use their phone and call us. They don't need to be on camera for the sessions. Only the student has to be on camera. The sessions, for the most part, most of them are 45 to 60 minutes long. Except for the psychiatric assessment. If they are referred to psychiatry, the first appointment with the psychiatrist is 90 minutes long. Those are the longest that we have, 90 minutes with the psychiatrist. And for the most part, therapy sessions are 45 minutes.
Any other questions?
So just to clarify, Ms. Peña, the parent intake, is that available after hours? So if we have parents who are working during the day and aren't available 8 to 5, will they be available to do the intake after 5 p.m.?
No, unfortunately, the clinic is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. That's one of the limitations we have right now. Our clinic is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. So all the appointments happen during that time. And actually, most of the sessions happen during the time the school campus is open. Because the idea is that the student will be on the school campus for this appointment. They'll take the session from the school campus. Each of your school campuses is going to have a space designated to TSHAT, and the student will be taking the session from that school campus. And most of the times, to be honest with you, the parents go to the school campuses to join the session with the student because they want to be on camera. Even though they don't have to, they want to be on camera, and maybe they don't have the connectivity or the equipment to do that at home, so they'd rather to go to the school campuses. But most of the sessions, actually our busiest times are from 9 to 4 because those are the times when the schools are open. We don't have many 8 a.m. or 4 p.m. appointments because the schools are closed at those times. And then to answer your question, no, we never have appointments after 5 p.m. because our clinic is closed. What we do, so the parents, they will have to come, they will have to be present in the intake and assessment and in the sessions if needed. But say, for example, it's a high school student, it's likely that the parents won't need to be present in the follow-up therapy sessions, only in the intake. What our providers do is that they call after 5, if needed, to kind of like just touch base with the family. But that is more for high school students. If it's, a younger student, the younger the student, the more likely that the parent will have to be involved.
And Ms. Pena, they can see them some from home, like during intercession and stuff to continue services, correct? If they have access.
Yes. So for example, in 2 weeks, right, we have the winter break. Most of the schools are going to be closed during the winter break, 2 weeks for the most part. We have, I think we have about 250 active patients right now, and we might see some of those patients during the winter break, even if the schools are closed, as long as the family has the internet and the equipment at home to take an at-home appointment, then we'll offer those services if needed. Now, if the family doesn't have the internet or the equipment, that's a different story. We'll probably have to wait until the school reopens. But yeah, we can do that. We can offer that. The same, for example, say the day of the appointment, the student is absent. We ask, right, whoever referred that student will send a schedule to that person, and we ask that person to please let us know as soon as they know that, the student is absent, and we'll call the family and we'll try to see the student at home if they have the equipment at home.
Does anybody else have any other questions they'd like to ask? Okay. That seems.
And I just want to quickly share, I'm so sorry, just want to quickly share, we are working right now with 32 ISDs, including your ISD, in 13 counties, and I think there's about 68 ISDs in the 13 counties we cover, so we hope to continue expanding. Last academic year, we were with only 9. And at this point in this academic year, we have enrolled 30 more. So we are at 32. And we are, having conversations with all the other ISDs that are not enrolled yet and trying to enroll them or, just make sure that they know about this program. So hopefully by the next academic year, we'll be present in more ISDs. So we keep trying to expand, and we are hiring for all the positions because the idea is that I will keep bringing providers as we keep getting referrals, right? As we enroll more schools, we anticipate more referrals, and as we see the increases in the number of students referred, we'll be hiring more providers because the goal is that I will be able to see them soon. That is, the goal of the program. It's about access. So right now we don't have waiting lists. If you send a referral, as soon as we complete all the paperwork and we make sure that we have consent from the right person, we should be. Same for psychiatry. We start with an intake and assessment, a week after we enroll the family. And then if they need to be seen by a psychiatrist, it shouldn't take us more than 2 weeks to have that psychiatrist see the patient. So I just wanted to add that because that's one of the big highlights about the program, that is all about access, because we know a lot of places have a long waiting list. So that's why the state is investing in this program, to make sure the students who need to see someone have access to a service that they can access without having to wait months and months. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Pena.
Thank you.
Okay. So does anybody have anything they'd like to kind of now share, just based on what they've heard and maybe possibly next steps in your head, or just possibly now that you've heard about clinical services now going to be an option for us as a district? Do you think that's a positive move? Do you think that's going to be something that's really going to be beneficial? And let me just remind everybody, it is free. Free services. And you hear free clinical services, you're like, wow, really? Yeah. To me, it's a great opportunity for us to take advantage of. And pretty excited myself, just really appreciative of Amanda over here and her hard work and really getting all this set up and organized. It's not easy because a lot of this has obviously been done remotely because they're located in the valley. But I think it's really a cool concept that they're able to use technology to provide the services that you would see if you were in person going to the hospital or a psychiatrist. And so.
Dr. White, we used that at the Academic Career Center
Yeah.
last year, and it was really beneficial for our kids who had anxiety or problems at home, we had a lot of trauma at home. So we would set up a time, they would meet in an area like in a classroom or an office. They would have it set up. It would be about 45 minutes, they'd go in there and they'd come out, and I'll tell you, it was beneficial for the times that they met.
Excellent.
And I believe that you were talking about presence learning. Were you talking about presence learning?
No, we met with them. They presented to our school at the beginning of the year last year. We had a Zoom meeting and we
Okay.
brought them in for a while, so.
The only exclusion to students getting services is if they're already receiving services outside. So if they already have a psychiatrist, they can be referred because they already have services. If they already have a therapist, they have a therapist on the outside, they already have services, they have access. It's to meet those kids in the gap that don't have any access.
What if they have special ed counseling services?
So they're,
With us?
with us, it's different, because I still see some of the students here that are gonna, as a mental health professional, that are gonna be referred over there.
Okay.
I'll just be kind of on support, but I do know that some, depending on the circumstances, might, but a lot of our SPED students have services on the outside.
Yeah.
Because they already have a diagnosis, and they may already be on medication. I did ask her the other day, because I have some students who may have a therapist but don't have a psychiatrist, because that's like impossible in the Coastal Bend, and she said those can still be referred for psychiatric consultations, even though they have a therapist, and then they can follow up with their pediatrician to continue to monitor that medication, but they can get the actual psychiatrist to prescribe the medication and kind of give them feedback on that.
So full services.
Yes.
So what is the process for TM to use that or to get kids referred?
Sure.
What a great question.
So, Ms. Pena came out, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, and trained all of us counselors on the referral process and what that looks like and the referral paperwork. So it's just a matter of, if the parent requests it on the referral piece or the third to last page, I think it's like page 5, Dr. White, it says parent requested services on the referral, so you can put that in there. But the parent has to sign the paperwork in front of a staff member. So it has to be somebody from the district who witnesses their signature. If you go down one more. See, it says student or guardian requested services.
So parent comes into me and I don't have any counseling ability or whatever, and then we're sitting there and she's like, I need help, I
Yep.
need somebody to see. do I fill that out or do I give it to you?
I mean, it can be either or. If I'm not available, it's pretty straightforward going through. I filled out one the other day. It took me less than 10 minutes to get all the information up.
So we can fill them out
Mhm.
ourselves and.
Yes, because
So
you're a
can
point of contact because you're an administrator.
Can a teacher fill them out?
They can, but I would say that after they filled out, they should probably run it through us and we should do the referral part.
Okay.
So if they meet with the parent because they have access to that parent, then yes, I think that they can.
But
It's just
then
a
they
matter
schedule them to come in and see us and we do
right,
it.
and work
So-
through that, yeah.
So administrators and counselors, really.
Essentially.
And when I talked to her the other day, she said the ones that would like have, I know she said like high school, but when I talked to her as far as like parents being the actual sessions, she said typically it's like her kindergarten pre-K kids who like legitimately need a parent in there. And they can use the school counselor, but the parent has to be willing to sign a HIPAA release. So if the parent's not willing to sign a HIPAA release, either the parent has to be there, or the services can't continue.
For all services, counseling included, just even the little counseling,
Yeah.
okay.
But that's usually, she said, primarily kinder, pre-K, or if you have a student that has, significant behavioral needs, that the parent needs to be there for that appointment. But typically, she said the appointments would be the student and the therapist. The psychiatrist, of course, always has the adult, because you're talking about medication now.
Maybe I misheard, but did they only receive 4 sessions?
So when we talked to her in the training, she said that they typically start with 4 sessions. However, their goal, if they need ongoing services, is to locate them somebody in the community to get them services. And so if it takes them a while to find somebody, they'll continue to see them until they can locate services for them, get them, if they're on Medicaid, they have to find a provider that offers Medicaid to see clients with Medicaid, and sometimes those wait lists are long. So they'll continue to see them until they can link them up with services in the community if they need ongoing services. But it's like case by case.
Do they know there's nobody here in the?
Yes. They have a lot of rural areas that they
They're
work.
aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough to find.
It is.
Yeah.
Which is kind of unique or just different because being Corpus Christi and kind of close to San Antonio, you would think something in between. It's not like we're in the middle of nowhere and we're small.
Right.
Relatively speaking, I would say we're a major city and plenty of access given our location. So it's interesting that that's still kind of an issue here, right? Especially post-COVID. So I feel like this is a great opportunity for us to truly take advantage of it as a district. Hopefully, as now that we're kind of moving towards implementation with technology, we've identified locations on campus, points of contact. I'm hopeful that by the second semester, we will kind of be able to start kicking this off, and those students that we kind of already know are kind of on our list or our radar. Hopefully, this is an opportunity for them to improve in the areas that we would like for them to improve in.
And I would say if you have students that that are like, oh, they need this, and their parent works, they're gonna see students over the winter break. So that would be a perfect time to be like, hey, let's get you referred for that intake appointment, so they can have that intake appointment at home, and the parent doesn't necessarily have to come to the campus. So,
With their educational components, do they have a list of what's available to us for our teachers?
I can ask her for a list. I'm sure they have some sort of list. I don't have the list myself.
I'm sure possibly their website might have more
And I
information
think too, it's if you say, like she was saying, if you say, oh, we need this for the parents, like we need them to be educated on this, then if they don't have it already figured out, they'll find a clinician that may be an expertise or expertise in that area, and then come up with a program for that, for a presentation.
Good stuff, right?
That'd be great.
Well, now that we've been able to kind of go through the presentation for today's meeting, I'd like to kind of now back up and kind of get to this part where Ms. Mugi here, our social worker for the district, has an opportunity to truly get introduced. Is everybody familiar with Amanda? Hopefully on some level, shape, or form. She has been with us for a while now, but I feel like she's still kind of the best kept secret in the district. And so I just wanted to give her an opportunity to kind of introduce herself and to share a little bit more about what she actually does and some of the procedural kind of processes that are kind of in the works with how we see her and kind of what she does when she is seeing a student or there is a student being referred and happens to go through her in that process. So I'll kind of turn over to you, Amanda, to share whatever you'd like.
Sure. So I've been with the district since October of 21. So I didn't start seeing kids until the spring of last year when they worked out all the logistics with the attorneys for consent forms. So I see students right now on all campuses but ACC. Currently, I did see one last year at ACC briefly. And it's kind of case by case, but my home campus is the high school, and that's where the majority of my students are. Not to say that the students younger don't need me, it's just a matter of where I'm housed and the amount of students I have come to me. And so, most of my referrals come from, the guidance counselors or the administrators from other campuses or from my campus. And so they'll contact me and be like, hey, can you meet with a student? They have this needs going on. And so I usually do an initial meeting with the student, kind of see what's going on. And then we go from there. I either contact the parent and start setting up the ability to discuss continuing to see them with a consent form. Some of them I just see as kind of support and not necessarily one-on-one, like therapeutic sessions. I see them for like, hey, how are things going? How can I support you? What things are you needing? Those kinds of meetings. So they're not necessarily that I have to contact the parent and get consent because I'm not offering them treatment services. I'm offering them just kind of some extra support that they could additionally get from the guidance counselors. The wraparound services. So as a social worker, we see the child or the adult person in environment. And so wraparound services is making sure we meet the whole person. So we're checking in with the parent to see what's going on at home. So we know what's going on at school. Do they need, when we talk about wraparound services, he's pulling up something for us. But when you talk about wraparound services, you have to meet all of their needs for, like, some of their basic needs to allow them to have, like, their educational needs met, right? Because if they aren't sleeping at night because they don't have a bed to sleep on or because their parents aren't home or whatever the case is, they're clearly not going to come to school and be a functioning child. And so when we talk about wraparound services, it means working with the child and the family and making sure that we meet all of their needs total as a person in an environment.
It's kind of like when we had the first meeting, if you were here, we talked a little bit about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then in comparison to that, Bloom's taxonomy, which is kind of what, as educators, we tend to focus in that area, Bloom's hierarchy of critical thinking and those types of skills. However, when we think about the child in a holistic manner, if we're not meeting the basic needs or the fundamental needs of that child, it is virtually impossible to be successful with anything related to Bloom's academic, critical thinking, or any of those types of skills that, as educators, that's where our wheelhouse is. That's where we focus. However, being mindful of the actual student themselves, wraparound services is a way of really bringing it all together, while also incorporating the family and the community aspects of how support can be provided for a student. And so this is kind of the district and our attempt to provide these types of services through Amanda, and then through some of the partnerships that we're starting to establish with TChat and also Care Portal. So if you want to talk a little bit about Care Portal.
Sure. So Care Portal is an agency. It's an internet platform that links families with churches in the community. So it's that spiritual aspect, really reaching those students, just reaching their spiritual level, right? And so what we do is we're looking, hopefully, we did a informational meeting last week, and so a lot of people were invited from the community to come and sit, a lot of churches, and so they presented, and so they have to onboard 5 churches within our community to start the process. And they told me this week they have 5 churches that are interested in the onboarding process. From there, if things move through, we would work through an MOU to establish what that looks like, and we are looking to launch it, if all goes well, in the spring at the middle school campus. And so I would be the requester at this time. So it's a pilot program. It'll be March, April, and May. And then if we decide to take it on full time, then we would look at the whole district. But we're going to start out at the middle school campus. I would be the requester because it's really about, like a family doesn't have electricity, right? Like their electricity got cut off for XYZ. So I can call the family, see what's going on, see how I can help. And then I put a request in after I've met with the family and they're in agreement online. And then that shoots out a request to all the churches. And then a church can pick it up. They contact the family and then they move forward with the process of helping that family. So that's kind of that wraparound service. It is a pilot program because after the pilot program, it does cost the district so much per student. However, I am looking at a grant, and Care Portal is willing to co-author the grant for us so that we can use it long-term if after the pilot process, we want to continue to use it.
Do we feel like that would be a beneficial way of helping provide more support by kind of going in a different type of direction than what we would typically go in when we start talking churches and education? However, being that we're a 4A district with a one high school kind of, town where we're like one school to one school, to me, I feel like this is a great opportunity to really link ourselves to the community in ways that we've really never attempted before.
And it doesn't require that the family involves themselves in that church, right? Because some people are not spiritual, they have no interest, and so there's no requirement. The church's goal, of course, is to, invite them into their church and all of those things, but they'll still service their need, even if the family's like, we have no interest in you. But they do want our request, they'll train requesters once we get to that point because they want the needs to be vetted, so it's not just somebody saying, oh, my electricity got cut off, and you know that this XYZ is going on, and that's why, whatever the case happened. And so they want the request to be vetted and that we've made contact with the family and the family understands the process and all of those things. So it's not just anybody can obtain that service.
What's the cost after the pilot program?
So what we would be looking at would be 50 cents per student.
Which is absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things of what sometimes we do pay per student for things that we currently offer. For instance, some of the academic and instructional programs that we have in the district, some of those can go anywhere between $2.50 a student to $12.50 to a student. I think the highest one we have is around $20 per student. And so when you hear 50 cents a student, I'm just like, tell me more. I want to know a little bit more about what you'd be willing to offer, because relative to costs of other programs that we do provide, it's a very good deal.
And I found a grant within like the local area, so it's not necessarily Coastal Bend, but it's within South Texas, and they fund things similar to this, and so I think they'll be willing to fund this. Of course, we'd have to write the grant with Care Portal and go from there, but I have high hopes that we'd be able to follow through with it. So.
Any other questions on Care Portal? They were at the high school when, last Thursday?
Last Thursday, yes, they came and did a presentation. They had several churches come out and some board members came out and sat within the meeting and asked questions. So it was a really good meeting. I really enjoyed being able, and so there's Care Portal and then there's the implementing partner, which is kind of what I learned more about. And I have experience with Care Portal because I worked for Child Protective Services for many years, and that's typically who they respond to is DFPS. They now respond to the Pregnancy Center as well. But there's an implementing partner, which is the one that's over the churches, and then there's Care Portal. So our implementing partner in the Coastal Bend is Agape Ranch. I don't know if y'all know about them, but they work with the child care foster system. But they, in all their greatness, called me the other day right before the meeting. They're like, hey, we've got a grant we need to use today. We need you to tell us what you need for your class. Like, well, I don't have a class, but for your students. So I was like, we're running out of hygiene products. Some of our younger kids could probably use socks and underwear. So they purchased it for us just because they had the money to use. They also are, I wasn't there today because I have a child at home sick, but they were also bringing Christmas presents over for me to be able to give out to students that may have not gotten Christmas presents or we missed in the mix of things. And so I think it's really beneficial for us to make those community partnerships moving forward.
And just on that note, I wanted to make sure everybody's aware that we do have a district flow chart for how the social worker referral process works. And so if you weren't aware of that, here it is. And you can kind of get a sense of when we start looking at the actual concern and where that concern is coming from and kind of how that concern gets processed. Typically, we would have that kind of processed through a counselor. And then through that process, the counselor then kind of gets to determine from there what kind of concern it is, to be a little more specific, and perhaps if that concern really is more kind of on the side of being acute or critical, kind of social and emotional related, then you can kind of see the breakdown from there as far as whether or not that student is just general ed or that's a student that receives services, whether it's special education or 504.
And they can be under special ed and 504 and not receive social and emotional, is that what it is? Services through the SPED counselor, and so they can still be referred to me. I would say lately the majority of my referrals have been acute critical crisis student in crisis for suicidal ideation. And so I'm meeting with them, doing an assessment with my credentials. I have the ability to assess and determine, yes, they need to go to the psych hospital, no, they need to safety plan. And so we do a safety plan with the student. We call the parent, explain what's going on, that they need to monitor them. Or if we have to send them to the psych hospital, then I call the parent and say, hey, this child needs to be seen today. The middle school, I don't see nearly as many at the middle school because you'll have them, I say probably quite frequently. MHID comes out to the middle school often, but the middle school is really good about calling the parent and be like, no, you have to come right now. So that's primarily what I'd say. Now I still see kids that aren't critical and aren't on crisis. Some of them just have anxiety. They've been seeing the counselor frequently for anxiety or a certain issue, and so eventually they get referred to me to start working with, so.
And we do also have a referral form here, so if there was a specific need that we would want Amanda to address, here is that form. And then, of course, board policy. If anybody would like to know a little bit more about mental health and wellness, policy FFEB kind of outlines exactly kind of our responsibilities as a district, what we can and cannot do, our practices and procedures that we have to follow, and just some of the consent items that we've already covered. And so just to kind of give you an idea from a policy standpoint and also just from a services standpoint, how all this works, just wanted to make sure everybody on this committee is aware that while kind of relatively new, we are definitely wanting to kind of continue on with our social work and our services that we're working through on that end, and just to kind of see what else we can continue to add, as we know that the needs of our students are pretty high at this moment, and we really don't see them dissipating anytime soon. In fact, it seems like the more we go on through the school years, the greater of the need we continue to see from our students. And so rather than kind of just letting this be a 1, 2, 3 year thing, we're really looking at more of this as a first year, second year, a third year in terms of a long-term plan for the district. And so this is kind of our initial beginning of that plan.
So do we have anything like like a sensitivity or an awareness training for teachers? So like to how to handle these situations in the classroom whenever they're not being handed off to counselors or social workers, psychiatrists, and so on?
When you say sensitivity, do you mean in terms of crisis intervention?
No, how they get, there's a lot of,
Conflict resolution?
we're having a lot of new situations come up with COVID and having been what it was, and we have sensitive parents, we have sensitive students, and
by
teachers.
sensitive, what do you mean exactly? Delicate?
Yeah, and it's kind of it. It's a teacher will, if a teacher says, no, we don't do that kind of thing, and they stand by their laurels, they have the right to say so, and that's not how we function. And the child is, I don't know how to say it, they're hypersensitive to it, and they won't take, they can't handle no. And then they go home, they say the teacher yelled at me, told me I couldn't do this, and they, pretty soon we have them in the hallway, they're yelling and screaming, things like that, and we have several scenarios that pop up like this, and I've seen more and more of it, and our teachers are not necessarily equipped. They don't know, how do I handle this situation? How do I talk to these students? It's kind of, our school is a very different atmosphere than what they used to be.
The ESC has a program, I don't remember all the details, but they went over at our first Assistant Principals Academy. The worker came in for that exact thing. I don't remember the name, but I know Ms. Reyes was familiar with it.
It's cultural sensitivity, I believe. In
This
a
was-
very general overview.
This was
sense.
more from a mental health standpoint.
Yeah. And all this is relatively so new still that the need or the desire to have a kind of one-size-fits-all to kind of capture everything you just said. I don't believe I am familiar with a program that really catches it all, because kind of what you covered was about 5 or 10 different
Yeah.
topics that typically are segregated out, where you kind of talk about building positive relationships, some conflict resolution, cultural sensitivity training.
And our teachers are seeing that,
yeah.
every single day in just one class.
I think
Right.
that would be
And
good
so-
for the teacher and the professional development, early year or
Yes.
going back for professional development days, we can really utilize and explain that, have that conversation with them, and they can say, oh yeah, like Dr. White said, oh, those are these topics, and they can be like, oh yeah, and then they can put a presentation on, and maybe you can use it as part of your professional development.
It's just tough because I don't know what to tell my teachers sometimes because I get the same thing. They go, I don't know how to teach this kid. I don't know what to do. and they're just at a loss, and I want to give them tools to do something.
It's what Mr. St. Damon was talking about is PACS Good Behavior Game with Judith Gonzalez
Tax
Rodriguez.
behavior.
Educational Specialist Counselor. Is that not what at our Assistant Principal Academy, it's
This
at
was the first session,
oh,
the
okay.
very first, not the most recent.
Are you going back through your notes right now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I had a question
Sure.
about, as a parent,
Sure.
about the social worker. I know a lot of your work is for high school, but he's mentioning now the lower grades. And I used to teach the lower grades, and we had those same issues just with 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds. But what's the plan on helping those students to try to catch them from being a bigger problem when they get older?
Great question. Currently, our model right now is that we have parent facilitators at the lower levels. We have like 2 per campus. And so that is kind of how we're helping support those students at that level. But again, if they are in need of more acute services, because there is a greater need there that can't be met by those parent facilitators, then that doesn't mean that Amanda here can't get involved and provide services as needed.
It would be really
She's a district employee who happens to be housed at the high school, so therefore being that she's located there, she just tends to see those students the most. So,
I think long-term too is finding a, possible grant that will cover another social worker to do more of the social emotional learning at the lower level.
Right.
To
That's
do
part
more
of
of
the
the
plan.
prevention and not so much the, crisis needed acute situations. So I think long-term, that would be our goal, is to find somebody to be able to do that social and emotional learning piece at the lower level campuses. But I have a student, like I said, at some of them, they've contacted me. One I had, so when I first started, they had me at primary and intermediate, so that's where I was last year. And so all of my students were primary and intermediate. And then as needed, I had one at ACC for a very brief time. So we see it at all levels. And so I have a kid from last year that I still see at the intermediate, and then I have one at the primary that became a new situation that needed to be seen. So it happens, they call me and say, hey, can you do this? And we just work it out. But I'm hoping to utilize TChat as a referral source, because I feel like I have to be everywhere all the time because there are so many high needs. And so I'm hoping that TChat will take off some of the pressure, and then I can focus sometimes on more of the acute critical situations, or how we can, again, do those wraparound services and not just mental health, but the whole situation, so.
yes, ma'am.
So other than to shoot you an email, is there another way, or to call you?
As far as students go,
Say from like the lower campuses who don't necessarily know you?
Oh, so the middle school would be the only one that I haven't, wasn't housed at. Intermediate and primary, they know me because I was there last year. So primarily, the counselor will shoot me an email, or an administrator will call me and say, hey, we have this student, this is what's going on, and then I get with Dr. White, and then we kind of make a plan going forward for that student. So, and then of course, if a nurse or somebody emails me,
I will say, Nurse Cortez, that when we do meet monthly with the nurses, with the librarians, with the counselors, we do kind of cover all this stuff at those meetings. So district-wide, our counseling department is aware of what's happening at all campuses, so that if there is a need or a concern, everybody's aware of how to reach out, what's currently available. And so during those monthly meetings, we do cover all that. So just to make everybody aware that we do communicate across the district, so that there is no disconnect or misunderstanding from what could potentially be happening from each campus, or even what the potential options are for support services. So, did you find your stuff, Iris?
Is it Brandolyn Haggerty with MHID? It says help with mental health, substance abuse, grief, trauma, supporting children with
Possibly, I would have to
What's it that
go back and look at my handles.
Ms. Reyes used for our parenting conference?
That sounds pretty
so
close to it.
I'm probably sure that's probably.
But I'll follow up with you on that later, just to make sure. Okay. What I'd like to kind of touch base on next, before we kind of get into some handbooks, which will kind of take us back to some of the stuff we were just talking about, was just to kind of wrap up where we were at in our initial meeting with CATCH, and the CATCH program being about coordinated school health. And really looking at CATCH as a program that we could potentially adopt and use district-wide for those reasons. And so we have Yvonne here from the intermediate campus, just to kind of talk to us a little bit about what's going on in her world in physical education and just some of the things that she currently uses and her kind of current knowledge of what Catch is and how that could be used.
Okay, well, in our program, basically it's structured around physical fitness, physical activity / health, because we've got 45 minutes and a lot of kids. So pretty much when they come in, we give them a little challenge. They do endurance, they do, locomotor skills, non-locomotor skills. Then we go into a little, this is just my pattern. I'll have something I'll call a fitness drill, and it might be just a challenge like, run from here to there, run across the court and back in 10 seconds or 12 seconds or something. And we make a little challenge out of that, and the kids love that. And then we work on our warm-ups, so we tackle the components, your flexibility, your shoulder arm strength, your abdominal strength, and endurance. And then we make it fun, and we do our little lessons, where they can be with each other and play and, just have fun instead of just thinking it's torture. The Catch program, okay, so a few years back, we had a workshop. We had somebody come in, and they trained, and it was a meeting like this. And we got trained, and it was a coordinated approach to children's health, right? So that meant that the whole school, the whole campus, they wanted them involved. They wanted the cafeteria involved, the nurses involved, the teachers involved. Everybody had their little, like, mini lessons so that everybody was doing the same thing. And basically, that was about health. So it doesn't, the teachers want to work with you, but they already have so many things to do, and so it's hard to throw in those little lessons. Anyway, PE does it. Cafeteria is doing a really good job, now of, trying to make the plate look healthy. I just wish we could do something about all the junk stuff that comes in and limit the bags of chips that they like to eat during lunch, and they'd rather eat that than what's on their tray. So what I started doing kind of to make sure that everybody was doing something at the same time is in the morning we have, during morning announcements, every week I take kids from different levels, like 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. I'll have about 2 or 3 kids, and I'll tell them which exercises we're gonna do, and they're just simple exercises. They're not, 20 push-ups, where, it's just simple little exercises that they can start out the day with in morning announcements. So everybody's doing this, and a lot of the teachers will take part of that. Each one is just maybe a minute or 2 minutes. And, my kids, they'll demonstrate, and then the whole class is doing it. And pretty much that's working, because we walk in the hallways, and by the time we're finished duty and doors are open and we see the kids and they're participating, and we just make sure to tell them it's not a choice, they have to do it. And that's something that we were hoping, like, throughout the day when the teachers need a little brain break, or, they've been sitting at their desk for a long time and they're not getting in where the kids, they can get up and they have something to follow if they want. And then I started throwing in a little health tip in the bottom, eat your vegetables, or make sure you're drinking plenty of water, or, whatever I can find, just a simple little health tip. And that's kind of how I cover the Catch part. But it started out good. And as far as the activities with Catch, well, we already do them. You can do an activity, you can play a game of tag, and there's 10,000 different names of how you're gonna play this game of tag. So those activities, we take care of the moving part. It is a good program, and it's wonderful, Leslie, when everybody is involved, but it's just a little hard. Because also, which is a little bit hard for some people, they want you to eat healthy and make the right choices, and, have your portion sizes and have your colors on your plate, and don't drink a lot of sugar drinks like your Cokes and everything, drink more water, and it would have to be that everybody is setting the example, that your teachers are drinking the water and they're watching you drink the water. Well, that's hard to do because people want their Cokes or, so, you know, it's,
Or you're like me and don't drink water because you don't like water. Sorry.
but we, you know, we still push it, you know, the best that we can. So it is a good program, you know, and there's notebooks and there's activities for the PE teachers out there to use. But if you really want it to be truly the catch, the coordinated, that means that the whole school is talking about catch. Every day they're saying something about catch on the board. You know, let's talk about what we had for supper last night. Where was what vegetables did you eat? You know, that kind of thing, but.
Because what I heard you say was we kind of had some training, some
We did.
professional development at some point, and then kind of what happened from there?
Well, you know, we had people leave and somehow the notebooks got put aside or there was only, at the meeting that we went to, I don't think anybody was there that had ever done the catch. And I told them, I think your notebook should be somewhere, you know, on the shelf or something, but Marky was gonna look to see if they had one. Just
Okay.
because there's some things that they can follow there.
Absolutely.
But somebody from Catch did come and, you know, give us we had a whole day of training.
And I asked just because, again, just trying to be transparent with each program, not to mention this is part of our policy. It is a requirement to have a coordinated school health
Right,
program.
right.
So it's not like we get to pick and choose the policies we get to follow. We have to follow it because it is part of our board policy to have a coordinated school health program. And I know we kind of already covered this through the curriculum and the activities that we already do, but it would be nice to be able to, as a district, say that we use this program and here's what it looks like at each campus and here's kind of how we're all involved with it. Whether we're teacher, cafeteria worker, grounds worker, you name it, we're just kind of all doing our part within that coordinated school
And it
health
can
piece.
be the smallest things.
Exactly.
I mean, you can just, like I said, mention in your class, you know, how many people had their vegetables last night? Or did you eat fruit, you know, or little things like that, just to get it in their head so that they can start making maybe better choices. I don't know, because childhood obesity is going up and it's not coming down.
No, you're absolutely
And the
right.
kids don't want to move because they'd rather be sitting down watching TV and playing with their phones, and so it's challenging. But we gotta do it if they're gonna live long, healthy lives.
Does anybody have anything to add at the secondary level, or just as our students get older? Is there anything that you all have seen in particular that might be, you know, of note, worthy of noting?
Watching what those kids, the sixth graders eat in the morning is, it's a nightmare.
Big Red and hot chips.
Yeah.
I have to bite my
Tons of
tongue when I
sugar.
see kids coming in with the sucker in their mouth. Well, I bite it for a little while, but then I have to say something. I can't help it, but, you know.
Are we looking at any kind of policies for those energy drinks? We don't sell them.
Specifically,
We don't sell them, but I know that kids,
drink them.
they drink a lot of them, I think. And it's not regulated at home. I mean, you could say the same thing for Cokes, but I think the energy drinks are,
What kind of policy you want to put in, Ms. Vega?
I don't know.
No energy drinks
Or maybe not a policy or anything, but maybe just
More awareness?
student education, yeah. Just like, you know, it's not illegal, but it sure is bad for our kids.
Well, they drink the energy drink and then they complain of heart palpitations or they'll have high heart rate and then they're going to a cardiologist.
It
and
is
they'll
affecting
have
them physically, and I think they don't really realize, they're not making the connection.
Right,
And they've
and
been drinking them probably since junior high.
that's a code of conduct policy that locally we can create to say, if we don't want students bringing energy drinks to campus, that can be something put on the table for review. Because there are several districts that do not allow those drinks on campus. Because many of them, you have to be 18 or older to drink them.
I think at least the awareness, maybe not a policing of everything, because we are still in COVID and they still are like bringing their water. And I mean, to police the drinks.
How's that gonna work for Gabe, though? And his 5-hour energy drinks?
I can police it.
Okay.
I'll slap that out of his hand. No, but I just think maybe at least an awareness, because they do drink them, and there's some kids that have been drinking them for a long time, you know.
And I think it contributes to their anxiety, and they
Sure.
don't even realize it.
I'm sure it doesn't help with things.
Maybe at least some stuff that goes home or some kind of educational.
And that kind of gets us back to the whole social and emotional learning, where maybe this isn't so much social and emotional, but just in terms of health and awareness, and the whole education piece. There are opportunities to embed this in any type of lesson. You don't have to be a specific teacher of health or physical education to cover these topics. Any of these topics can be covered by anybody. And I think that's kind of the nice way of looking at this, for a lot of like interdisciplinary and crossover curriculum, which is why when we start talking in a little bit here about social and emotional learning, how can we begin embedding those particular lessons in our actual daily curriculum rather than just kind of covering those topics in isolation as a 15, 20-minute advisory period topic where maybe we are listening, maybe we're not, maybe some teacher is a little bit more consistent about that lesson than others. And I think working with the counselors in that monthly meeting capacity, we are looking at social and emotional learning as a way of putting together possibly a scope and sequence that as a district that we can follow, K through 12, that will allow us to be a little bit more aligned to those particular objectives. And so I think that's something, as we kind of make our way through that, as a counseling department, there's just a lot of opportunities there that I think if we can continue to make our way through all that, I think we can put something together that might be beneficial for the district. Ms. Garza, do you have anything to add on that? Just with the SEL?
I don't know about that, but for the catch program, I still don't know if it's gonna be good at the high school level, just because it seems like it gears more towards the lower levels.
Okay.
So I don't know how we would incorporate that with our PE and health education.
Noted. Okay.
Well, now I feel bad about eating chips.
So who's hiding the chips?
The cookies going away.
You need to come.
They didn't have any waters left.
They did not have waters, I know, I checked.
But what we're gonna do here in, for the next like 15 or so minutes is just, I want everybody to kind of review some of our current handbooks and some of our new ones that have been put together. What I'm passing out right now is our RIPICS plan. If we can think way back to when COVID happened, the RIPICS plan was put together as a way of continuing educational services for our students as we kind of were remote learning, but also returning in person. And so essentially RIPICS is for safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services. And so, again, going back to board policy and just code, TEC code, this is a district requirement. And so hopefully this isn't the first time you all have seen this. It is posted to the website. It has been updated several times. And so one thing that we are required to do as a district every 6 months until, I believe, school year 24, at the end of 24 is when it ends. We are required every 6 months to review our plan and to propose updates or changes if we feel they are needed. And so that is another responsibility of the SHAC committee, is to review this plan and to make any sort of recommended changes or updates as are needed. And so just, as everybody's kind of reviewing and looking on that topic of just COVID-19 and just health-related services or just health safety in general, is there anything that we have noticed still that needs to be addressed from a health safety standpoint? Or do we feel like we've got it pretty much under wraps and under control? So I haven't heard anybody complain or bring any concerns related to COVID, related to just being sanitary or cleanliness or anything like that. That hasn't been something that has been an issue. And again, a lot of this is just best practice. A lot of this is just, we encourage, we recommend, no longer mandate or require. But if there's anything here that you guys see that needs to be addressed, please let us know now. Mr. Van Matry, did you have anything to add on campus visitors or anything like that? Or are we still kind of currently just at the moment doing what we're doing right now with that? Or is there any plans to do anything different?
Those are primarily campus-based decisions that what they have heard from me is that I want to make every attempt possible to get our parents back into school. But at this time, I'm not prepared to be heavy-handed in doing something that the campus feels uncomfortable doing. So I know that in dialogues primarily with the elementary campuses, where you see by far the most parent involvement, I don't think they're to the point where they allow parents to have lunch, but I think they're on the verge of adopting some sort of policy where that can be done. There's an acute space issue at primary. That's not going to change. But I think we all know the importance of having our parents as partners and being at the campus. I know I get asked, not every day, but ever so often, this school district allows this, why aren't we doing this? I think there's several variables that the campuses are still uncomfortable with. I would say COVID is probably the least. I would say security is probably the highest. And we still have major issues with human error with respect to security. But we're working as hard as we can to alleviate that. I did see an issue today that was brought to my attention regarding outsiders onto the campus. Some of our students have private nurses. And I'm a little concerned with the scrutiny that we currently are providing regarding allowing them in. We have to allow them in, but as far as the vetting of who they are and background checks, I think there's some improvement that can be made there.
So like fingerprinting on them?
Perhaps minimum name check and taking a picture of credentials. Maybe that's an overreach, but certainly having something on file that we can briefly check when they do come in, and because they certainly have a right based on their IEP. But I just think the school can maybe do a little better job of providing some security there. So we had some of those conversations today. But I do find the energy drink, if there's a drink that you can't purchase it till you're 18, then it certainly doesn't have any business being consumed by minors on our campus. Now, I don't want, you've got your hands full enough at that intermediate cafeteria and others to turn into the soda police, but maybe a little education goes a long way, but we'll see.
Yeah, Just for those that are kind of monitoring the whole energy drink and just whatever else they're drinking, we'll definitely talk about that more as we kind of move throughout the year. And if there really is a need to kind of put something more specific in place that kind of helps guide all of us through that, we can definitely look at doing that at a later time.
Somewhat off topic, but being new to the district, how do we regulate peanut butter and from kids who may have those allergies? Do we have any specific policy in regards to that? Or nuts or, no?
Nothing related to food
I know
allergies?
that they have in their system, or at least they used to, in the system that you use when you go through the lunch line, they have their allergies like that pop up. I know at the middle school, they would have the nut allergy pop up, and so the cafeteria workers were like watching what they purchased. But as far as like people bringing things in, it's just kind of a.
I have seen SHAC committees regulate that, where it was just not allowed, because you're right, they may not receive the nuts or the peanut butter from the serving line, but may from a friend they're sitting next to. Have we had an issue with that?
I don't know,
They pretty much know, don't they, if they cannot?
swimmers, I'm a swim mom, swimmers ingest peanut butter like crazy, because it's a fast protein, it's a fast energy, so.
But you're talking about somebody that has this, that has an allergy to it, that is close by or something, and them getting sick from that, is that what you mean?
Being given something,
Or anybody.
By accident,
Like food sharing?
yes.
or even touching it, some are
Yeah.
so sensitive they
Yeah,
can't even.
I certainly don't want to take that away from our swimmers. I just want to, I know it's somewhat of a common practice at many schools to prohibit that, particularly at lunch.
Bees and ants are another one. I know in the atrium at the high school, bees are bad, and they do everything they can to get rid of them, and they just keep coming back.
Oh, yeah, it's early.
The crepe myrtles are open, and
They come on in,
they,
yeah.
and then ants, I mean.
Since child nutrition was brought up, I do want to kind of just touch base quickly on that, as our local policies were reviewed just recently by our TASB consultant. They recommended no changes to any of our policies, but if you were just wanting to kind of peruse through them, we do have 3 of them. Feel free, they're there for you to kind of just look over and kind of just become more familiar with. But if there is a need to revisit food allergies or just food sharing, and if that is an issue with allergies or just any health-related matters, we can definitely look at that in more detail if that's a need that you all decide that, is worthy of a further discussion.
I'm kind of surprised we haven't had more issues. I remember the.
Me too.
Yeah.
The last
glad.
big one we
Yeah.
had was at the middle school, and we had 2 twins, and one of them knew he had allergies, and he just went and grabbed somebody's peanut butter sandwich and shoved it down his throat. And then later he was like, it was, and he even told the teacher,
Later?
I ate a peanut butter sandwich, I think I'm going into,
Inflection.
yeah, so we had to like do the whole thing. That was a long time ago, and we really haven't, to my knowledge, had any issues.
We had a
Yeah.
girl right down in a rash because she's allergic to milk, and some kid next to her was playing with her milk on her tray and it splashed on her, and so,
Gosh, just by
Yeah.
touching her?
yeah.
Wow.
But I mean, can't stop milk. But
Yeah.
And we do the best, I mean, at the cafeteria, reminding them they cannot share food, and they cannot share food. They don't like that, but they cannot, we're constantly watching.
And kids most are very aware of what they can and can't do, and we have all their EpiPens and things available, and I think we're pretty ready for anything that may arise.
Even
I
an
think during
adult
the,
can do it.
during the school day, we're really ready for that. I think we might need to tweak some practices outside of the school day, like when they're having practice or theater practice or band practice, the procedures for attaining medical help or something like that. I think that we might need to visit some of that.
So not to be weird or nitpicky, but instead of if possible, you put something like if, I don't know, feasible to do so or something, or if reasonable.
Where at?
Well, I mean, with any, like the parts to say if possible. Well, yeah, it's possible for me to space kids 3 feet apart in the hallway, but it's not reasonable, I guess.
So you want if possible and reasonable, or
Yeah,
if just
something-
reasonable,
Maybe something of that nature.
or if available, or something to that effect? Yeah, that can be done. That could be the update. Okay, so again, if at a later time you guys get a little bit more thinking on this RIFIX plan, if there's feedback on that or just something you all would like to share as far as an update is concerned, just shoot me an email or let me know and I'll sneak that in there and we'll make that our 6-month update. And before we know it, it'll be 6 months later and we'll be kind of looking at this plan again, just to see if there are any changes or updates that need to be made. What I just passed out and kind of what will take us to the end of this meeting now are 2 handbooks that are relatively new. The first one being passed out is the newest one. The counseling department, myself, Ms. Bugie here, and soon-to-be assistant principals, possibly at our next meeting, we will look at some of these handbooks in more detail, just so that everybody's clear on some of the policies and procedures that as a district we are following. And so this was our attempt to kind of put down on paper exactly what we do, or whether it's related to our specific position or just typical procedures that we should follow given any topic like suicide ideation versus suicide threat, and just the differences of what those are and how we should be moving through them if we experience something like that on our campus, particularly what our role is and how that might affect us in our role. And so I just wanted to give this to you all, and for you all to kind of look at as you can. And just note too that on the slide deck here, the electronic copy allows you to be a little bit more efficient with your searches into the handbook. And so table of contents is linked to where these topics are found in the handbook. So you can just click and it'll take you right there. We do have district forms now, whereas before we really did not. And so as a district, like I said, we are streamlining our process so that, again, we are being consistent with how we are handling each student and what kind of situation they are going through as it relates to suicide prevention and just suicide risk assessment. And so this is just information for you all. Again, at any point, if there is a recommendation that you all would like to make for a change or an addition, feel free to let me know. And so, for instance, a couple times we talked a little bit about the student safety plan. Again, here's kind of what the form looks like. Very nice, easy to follow, step 1, step 2, step 3, so on and so forth. This becomes part of our documentation for that student. And again, just trying to be way more transparent, but also aligned in how we are handling these types of cases in the district. And so hopefully this helps. And also just makes clear to anybody who would like to know more about what we do as far as how we handle these types of things, they can review this handbook and get those answers. So hopefully this helps. And on that note, the other handbook that was put together is the anti-bullying and anti-harassment handbook. Very similar in the structure of the other handbook. This one's a little bit more involved just because anti-bullying, anti-harassment, they're kind of 2 separate things, but they kind of work together in terms of what processes you would kind of follow for each. And so again, just like with the other digital copy, if you just want to just get quick to where you want to go in the handbook, you can just click on the table of contents on the topic. It'll take you exactly where it is into the handbook. If you want to know more about policy, just click where you see the hyperlinks. They'll open and it's just a quick, easy reference. A lot of this is just obviously common knowledge and things that we already know we do. But it's really nice sometimes when things are written down or when we have new people enter the district, and sometimes procedures are a little bit different from district to district. Again, it's just clear about how this looks for us, and anybody who would like to know more about what we do, they can easily just pick up this handbook and read it and hopefully get those answers. For instance, the inclusion of cyberbullying was a new thing that we added as well, since there tends to be the most confusion on cyberbullying. Again, same process, very similar process that you would follow with just bullying in general, but obviously talking about the digital realm, the social media aspect, and how we handle off-campus versus on-campus cyberbullying. And then to kind of really help anybody who might potentially be a visual learner like myself, we did include some cool flow charts here at the back, where looking at David's Law, but making it TM specific. Looking at an investigation timeline, so what happens when we receive an initial notification? How would we move through that process and what each of those steps in the process looks like? And then looking a little bit more in detail about just cyberbullying and that flow chart and what that looks like. And so again, just our attempt from the district level to just make clear what we do, how we do it, and eventually the last part, which really won't honestly begin until next school year, when our professional development plan for the district is way more fleshed out and detailed. We will start incorporating more of these required specific employee trainings when it comes to things like bullying, when it comes to things like conflict resolution and sensitivity. All of that's going to be embedded on the job training that we will do throughout the year. It's not going to be something that in the general typical sense, as we all know, at the beginning of the year is when we like to cram everything in, and then we don't talk about it for, until the next time we do it all over again, right? Well, we will do a little bit of the initial rollout of this, but then, like I said, throughout the year, we will kind of continue to explore these topics in more detail as it relates to your specific position. This also includes students and helping our students become more trained on some of the things that they need to be aware of and how they can handle certain situations, whether or not, again, talking about bullying and the roles of being like a bystander, a perpetrator, the target, and really helping them understand those roles and how, if they find themselves in one of those roles, how they can respond, how they can act, and how they can move forward. And so that's now been built into this handbook, but like I said, moving forward, really going into these types of trainings and developments is going to be part of the expectation that will start for next school year. And hopefully we're okay with that.
I've had to use the bullying toolkit along with this, and it's excellent.
Does it help?
I like it very excellent, and really delineates between peer conflict and actual bullying.
Yes.
And I don't know, people that submit,
All the
do the
time.
bullying reports may not agree, of course, but that's why they're filing. But I really like it, and I like that it offers, I don't know if this has it doesn't have all that the toolkit has that the lawyers wrote for us, but there's a lot of additional things, like even the tier strategies. I mean, has a lot more that you can put in, whether it's bullying or not, to safeguard the kid. But I really think we've talked about a lot of stuff, we've done a lot of trainings, but really appreciate the procedures written out and tangible. And they're excellent. It's really well done.
Awesome. That's the goal, is to make it easy, simple, straightforward. You pick it up, you know what to do, there's no confusion. And that goes for anybody who, might be involved in a particular situation or incident. As we all know, with bullying, I'd say about 99% of the time it's not bullying. Just because we use that word doesn't make it so. However, in the event that we do have a case, we are handling it accordingly. And of course, knowing the laws and the policies behind it, and making sure that we're in compliance with all that as we do handle situations where we do have a bullying case that is a positive case.
I have a question, and I don't need to open it up. Are we looking at doing any kind of parent, I don't know how to say it, I was gonna say one thing. Parent expectations and behavior.
You're ready for that parent handbook, aren't you?
I'm kind of, well, I know that through David's law, there's other laws that have been addressing parent behavior. I think that it's, we're kind of coming to that place where, they have TV shows about it, just people behaving poorly in public and that kind of thing. And sometimes we get into conflicts between parents or between parent kids. We already know that the expectation is there that you don't approach another child. It's not yours, and we know that's inappropriate. But are we looking at maybe any written down
We are.
stuff for parents? Just hardly ever needed, but I think we're getting there.
I think we're probably gonna approach it more from a specific standpoint, like for instance, if we're talking about like events, just whether they're on campus, off campus, sporting events, or non-athletic, more academic, UIL, there'll just be some expectations built in to where here's what we expect, and it may not necessarily be, directed towards parents, but just behavioral expectations at this event. Students, parents, administrators, staff members, here's how we need to conduct ourselves in this particular situation.
Because we have the law, but then we have that gray area.
Yep.
That just, the expectations. And we've had some issues last year between parents that escalate.
I think it's just a matter of making clear what we expect and what we want to, what we will inspect, what we expect, meaning we will make sure we are watching for what we want to see and what we want to make sure happens. But at the same time, if we come into a situation where we do see something that needs to be addressed, having something in place to support why we're doing what we're doing, that's kind of what's going to be kind of what drives, I think what Ms. Vega's wanting to see is a particular, just procedures for things when we expect something and it doesn't happen, what do we do next?
Yeah.
So that we are holding those accountable, for our expectations.
I think our parents
and things like that.
expect that.
Well, how do we, as parents, feel about that? Would that help? Would that hurt? Does that do more harm than good? Is it with good intentions, but then we roll it out and we can just see that being a disaster? Anybody want to share?
I think it'll help. I mean, in that sense, I kind of think of my little kids in Little League. They have that sign
The
out there at the
athletics is always
field
the
saying,
driver of it.
you have to come, make sure that you're, acting the way you would want somebody to act towards your kids, and they're just kids. And, once you get to the high school level, middle school level,
It's a little
like,
different,
they need to
right?
set
But
the
it
example.
still has to happen,
Yeah.
yeah.
If the sportsmanship is key, and maybe possibly putting together expectations with some accountability measures to help everybody understand. If you follow, great, we're gonna have a great time, but if not, possibly here are some consequences or some things for accountability reasons that may happen as a result. We're definitely looking at doing that as well.
Well, we
So,
have like the red cards, when we go to.
like soccer, red card.
Yeah, we do have the red cards that we use at the high school football games and stuff. Do we all do that, or is that just a high school thing?
I wanna say that's just a high school.
You know, we have a ton of games, like you're gonna get kicked out. Here's why, put your name on it. I'm not gonna come back if it happens again, that kind of thing.
To the students and the parents?
Oh, to spectators, yeah, any spectators, yeah. I mean, generally, like in basketball games, it's the refs that tell us, get that guy out, and so then we just do it. But, we've had a couple of incidents where it's just inappropriate behavior going on. We had one with a different team, I was on the visitor side, vaping and stuff. Kind of kick them out. Doesn't always go well, but whatever. I don't know, just food for thought. I mean, we've got these are great. I think, I don't know if it would make more problems, people using it to file more reports and get somebody in trouble, or, I don't know. I just think that, something to consider.
Definitely. Now, on that note, it is 6:03, and I did have the meeting lasting until 6, so we will kind of stop here. I feel like with this committee, we could always go on forever because we just have so much that we can cover and talk about. But next time, and really this will be a nice segue into the next meeting, the second semester, we are looking kind of to start the second semester by pushing out 2 surveys, one for students, one for staff, regarding their kind of capacity for SEL, social emotional learning, and just trying to get some good data on where staff is at in their understanding, but also our students, so that, like I said, when we continue to work with the counseling department, we can start looking at good data to hopefully build a potential scope and sequence for social emotional learning curriculum that could potentially be used by all of us on some level, so that we can, again, move in that direction where we have those things in place. And on that note, that is the end of the meeting, guys. So again, I appreciate everybody's time. Didn't get a chance to sign in, please do so. And hopefully everybody has a great rest of their evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time today.
Mine's 3 and going on 13.
Oh, that's her too. She, that one that came to chair.